Hello, everybody. Before starting my presentation, I would like to say a few words about myself. My name is Iuliana Lungu. I'm a PhD lecturer at Ovidius University of Constanța, a Department of Teacher Training. And my areas of interest, expertise is methodology of English language teaching, the impact of teacher education on pre-service English language teachers, as well as investigating global policies and practices in teaching young learners. Maybe for this reason, I have chosen for my today's presentation this study um, whose title is, as you can see, just a moment, the challenges experienced by the English language teachers in primary schools worldwide and reflected at the local level of Romanian reality and practices. As a subtitle, Global versus Local. First of all, I will provide the worldwide context and some possible reasons for this context, such as the widespread introduction of English in kindergartens and primary schools, one of the most complex policies in the field of education. There are several reasons for this trend. First of all, it is often assumed that it is better to start learning foreign languages as early as possible. Secondly, economic globalization has led to the widespread use of English, and many governments believe that it is essential to have a competitive English-speaking workforce. And last but not least, parents. Parents who want their children to develop English language skills in order to benefit from the new global socio-economic practices. And as a result, they put a lot of pressure on decision makers to introduce English in kindergartens, in schools at an early age. However, there are several serious challenges that need to be considered when it comes to teaching English to young primary school students. But they will be discussed below. What about this present study? The present research is an investigative approach that is based on a large study exploring the practices of teaching English to young school children worldwide. A study which was conducted by the British School in 2013. And also refers to the policy and practice of teaching English in primary schools in Romania. Thus, the purpose of this article is to identify the major challenges faced by the English teachers in primary school, both globally in several countries involved in the study, and locally, respectively, in our country, in Romania. What about the literature on teaching English to young students? Well, there have been identified a number of challenges, including the fact that English is often introduced as a compulsory subject in primary school, regardless of who will teach it. Moreover, in some countries, there seems to be a shortage of English language teachers trained for primary education. Consequently, teachers can teach English without adequate training in the methodology of teaching English at primary level. And this situation can be found especially in poor area or rural areas. In addition, the spread of English as a lingua franca has led to the belief that students should acquire communication skills rather than knowledge of English. And these communication skills should start at an early age. Consequently, the more recent curriculum of young pupils emphasized communication skills, and this has led to the introduction of a form of communicative language teaching or task-based learning and teaching. Okay, but what is it all about? Teachers in the countries mentioned in this study find the introduction of this new approach is quite challenging. For example, the communicative language teaching method mentioned before is a pedagogical approach developed in Western countries to teach young adults in small, in well-equipped classrooms. So therefore, this method may not be appropriate in teaching large groups of children in classrooms where resources are limited. Moreover, because the teachers can only receive the basic training in the theory and practical applications of this approach, they try hard to implant it effectively. Also, these important approaches, communicative language teaching or task-based learning and teaching, may conflict with educational traditions or with what some authors call cultures of learning. To mention some of the major challenges, I would say that large classes are a common challenge, leading teachers to believe that it is difficult or even impossible to introduce this student-centered education because they cannot closely monitor language use to students, or they cannot use work in pairs or groups. And a related issue is the classroom control and discipline. The problem of teaching resources is another major challenge given the global prevalence of early English language learning. It is quite worrying that in many countries there are no adequate books, insufficient funds for the equipment and facilities needed for student-centered methodology. And although the technology to support English language teaching has developed a lot in recent years, teachers have not always been able to access its benefits. Also, the level of competence English language teachers have. And of course, we are talking here about the low level of competence of teachers or the lack of confidence in their ability. Motivation is another key challenge because it can be difficult to motivate the little students. Because children fail to understand the relevance of learning English because they have little contact with English speakers, especially in rural areas. And last but not least, the policies and curricula that support communication-based teaching are often I don't know how to say, incompatible with the requirement of national examination, which often focuses on grammar and vocabulary. The current teaching English as a foreign language situation in Romania, especially in primary education, is presented here, starting with the preparatory grades, continue with grades 1 and 2, and grades 3 and 4, where the foreign language is taught as a compulsory subject. But since I'm a bit short on time, I'm moving on to the next slide, presenting the challenges, the real challenges the Romanian teachers of English face in primary education. And I would start with a paradox for primary school education in terms of language education. That is the fact that foreign languages are taught either by specialist teachers without any methodical training for the early ages, either by teachers specializing in preschool education, such as primary school teachers, but lacking the knowledge, the language knowledge and skills. Another challenge refers to the curriculum, which should be appropriate to the age and stage of young learners. Also, the training courses are considered that focus on issues related to teaching of modern languages in secondary school and not in primary schools. There are more challenges, as you can see here, but we will continue our discussion by saying a few words about research methodology of this study. A mixed method was adopted for the study, which combines elements of qualitative and quantitative research approach. The study consists of two sections. The first is a classical question in which teachers were asked to order elements that would best improve learning and teaching in their context. And of course, these questions reveal a lot of problems, such as better access to resources, such as books and materials, better access to new technologies, or such as DVDs, other digital services, training in new language teaching methodology, in this case English, improving one's level of English, smaller classes, teaching English at a younger age, several hours of English, all these elements being signaled by the specialized literature too. The second section of the survey data is an open-ended question, such as what aspects of your work do you find most challenging? And we find words that are repeated, such as discipline, motivation, grammars. Also interviews with 5 teachers who completed the study took place in 5 different countries, such as Colombia, Italy, South Korea, Tanzania, and the United Arab Emirates. Countries were chosen to include important continents. And the idea was to highlight different perspectives around the world. The results are displayed here. It can be seen from this table. The columns on the left are the most important, and the ones on the right the least important. Okay. Learning English, for example, learning English at an earlier age is considered the second less important category, while better access to teaching resources and an improved level of teachers' English attract a similar number of responses, but are still considered less important than other factors. For more in-depth information on teachers' perceptions of the challenges they face was obtained from that open-ended questions mentioned before. what aspects of your profession do you find most challenging? And as you can see, this descriptive table was generated from the corpus analysis. I would end by highlighting some pedagogical implications for teachers instead of conclusions. And one of them reveals the fact that teachers are challenged by a lack of vocational training, a lack of knowledge, language knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and a lack of teaching resources. Although government policy often results in the consumption of time and energy by introducing teachers to new contemporary approaches recommended in the literature, especially in the Western literature, such training is not necessarily useful for teachers. Globally, teachers identify teaching skills as a special challenge that training courses must address. And other challenges are more localized, more specific, as the case studies show. And these include classroom size, teachers' own language skills, time pressures. And I would end with the words of some of a famous education specialist who used to say that teachers should be helped to develop the knowledge and skills, attitude, and autonomy needed to build their own context-sensitive pedagogical knowledge. And I think that this should be the goal of education to all teachers. Thank you for listening to me and also for your participation. All the best.